Hey, I'm Sophia. Before we start, go grab a snack and get comfortable for a bit. These stories take their time, and they are told the way I'd tell a friend late at night. I really hope you enjoy them. This story has one update on it and my own opinion at the end. Comment and tell me if you agree. Let's begin. After years of being overlooked, I won a major award and threw a party just for myself. And the wildest part was standing there under a ceiling full of fairy lights, holding a glass of Prosecco, and realizing this was the first room I'd ever been in where everyone was actually there for me. Not as someone's plus one, not as Chloe's little sister, not as the girl who organized everything and then sat at the back. They were looking at me, waiting for me to speak, their faces soft and expectant while the playlist hummed quietly in the background and the smell of wood-fired pizza and vanilla candles mixed in the air. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my fingertips. I cleared my throat, fingers sweating around the stem of the glass, and glanced at the cake behind me. 3 tiers, white frosting, gold writing that said, "You did this." My best friend, Zara, gave me a tiny thumbs up from near the bar. The Bluetooth speaker crackled as I tapped a spoon against my glass. "Okay," I said, hearing my own voice shake. So, apparently I won a big shiny thing, and instead of waiting for someone else to throw me a party, I finally grew a spine and did it myself. The room laughed, warm and genuine. My eyes stung. For a second, I flashed to where I'd been 3 months earlier. Standing in my parents' kitchen, holding the award certificate in my hands, while everyone argued about my brother's new car and barely looked up. It was a Tuesday afternoon when my boss called me into his office and told me I'd won. That's where this really started. For context, I'm 29 and I work as a product designer at a mid-sized tech company. Nothing glamorous, nothing that makes the news, but I design the stuff that makes apps usable for real people instead of tech brothers. I love it. I'd been quietly killing myself over a redesign project for a mental health app, late nights, user testing on weekends, dozens of tiny tweaks no one outside the team would ever notice. Our head of department, Greg, submitted the project to a national industry competition. I honestly forgot about it after the obligatory group photo. Then the email came. I'd been named Emerging UX Designer of the Year. Not the company. Not Greg. Me. Individual credit, my name alone on the digital plaque. I designed the flow, championed the accessibility features, fought with devs over making mood trackers easier for people with tremors. And a panel of strangers somewhere had looked at that and said, "Yeah, this is something." Greg called me into his glass fishbowl office and did that hands together, "I'm about to deliver news" thing. "So, Lena," he said, "remember the UX Awards?" I assumed we lost. I joked, clutching my notebook. He spun his monitor around. There it was. My face in a small thumbnail from our corporate headshots, my name in bold. "You didn't," he said. "You won." For a second, I just stared. My brain did that static buzz thing. Won as in? As in, they thought your work was the strongest in the category. He leaned back, clearly pleased with himself too. "There's a ceremony next month. They want a short acceptance speech. You'll be representing us." I walked back to my desk in a daze. My fingers hovered over my phone, itching to text someone. My parents? My brother? My boyfriend, Tom? My family had spent years treating my job as this vague, unimportant thing. Computer stuff. App drawings. My older brother, Luke, was the star, law degree wedding with 250 people invited, the only grandchild so far. At every family dinner, Mom would ask Luke about his latest case or his son's daycare. Then she'd pat my hand and say, "And you? Still doing your little design thing?" Tom, on the other hand, was supportive in theory. He was doing his MBA and loved to talk about our future as if it were one of his group projects. In practice, he often acted like my work was flexible background noise. "You can just move your deadlines," he'd say when I told him I had a late-night usability test. "It's not like you're in court or surgery." Still, he was my person. So I texted him first. I just won an industry award. Like, national. For the mental health app. The typing bubbles appeared. That's cool, babe. Congrats. Party popper. No follow-up. No, tell me everything. Just that. I stared at the screen, stupidly deflated. I turned to my coworker, Zara, instead. Apparently I won something, I said, holding out my phone. She squealed and tackled me in a hug. We ended up huddled around my monitor while I clicked through the awards website, reading the judges' comments. Thoughtful, human-centered design. Meaningful impact for vulnerable users. My chest felt fizzy. For once, I wasn't just the one getting things done quietly in the background. I told myself the family would understand how big this was. We have a weekly dinner at my parents' place, most Sundays. Nothing fancy, spaghetti, garlic bread, kids' toys everywhere. The Sunday after I found out, I drove over clutching a printed copy of the email like a kid bringing home a report card. As soon as I walked in, I could tell the energy was already orbiting around something else. Luke's new Tesla was parked out the front, gleaming obnoxiously in the driveway. Inside, Mom was stirring sauce and loudly telling my aunt on speakerphone, "Well, he works so hard, he deserves something nice." "Hey," I said, kissing her cheek. "Smells good." "Hi, love," she said, distracted, wiping her hands on a tea towel. "Can you set the table? Your brother's just taking the baby for a little drive. He wants your father to see the dash screen thing." I swallowed. "Sure. I actually have some news." "Tell me in a minute," she said, phone tucked between shoulder and ear. "Use the good plates." Luke's brought that fancy wine. I set the table. I waited while Dad and Luke stood in the driveway, making impressed noises over the car. I waited while everyone sat down and the baby threw bolognese at the walls, and my Nana told the story of how Luke had won a debating competition again, as if it had happened last week instead of 15 years ago. Finally, there was a lull. I took a breath. "So, I have something to share," I said. "My team submitted our mental health app to a national UX competition, and I won Emerging Designer." I waited for it, the widening eyes, the wow. The congratulations. Mum looked up from cutting the baby's spaghetti. "That's nice, darling," she said, smiling vaguely. "Is that the one with the moods?" "Yeah," I said. "It's a national award. There's a ceremony and everything. I'll be giving a speech." Luke poured himself more wine. "Do they, pay you for that?" he asked. "It's more recognition," I said, my cheeks warming. "It's kind of a big deal in my field." Dad nodded politely. "Well, good on you," he said, the same tone he'd used when I told him my rent had gone up and I negotiated it down. Mildly impressed, but not enough to derail the Luke show. 2 minutes later, Mum was back to talking about the Tesla's autopilot, and my Nana was cooing over the baby chewing on a breadstick. My sentence was still hanging in the air, unfinished. I looked down at my plate and stabbed a piece of garlic bread. Inside, something sagged. This wasn't new. It was just louder because I'd actually come in expecting them to care this time. Tom wasn't much better. When I told him later that night, he kissed my forehead and said, "See, this will look great on your CV." Then he changed the subject to his group presentation on supply chain management. I lay awake that night staring at the ceiling, thinking if I'd gotten engaged or pregnant, they'd be sending links in the family WhatsApp group. But a career milestone? Background noise. For a week or two, I just stewed. I went through the motions. Work, gym, dinners where I quietly downplayed the award because every time I mentioned it, I felt stupid. Like I was shoving my little gold star in people's faces. Then the awards ceremony happened. It was at a hotel ballroom, all carpet patterns and name tags and tiny canapes. Greg sat at the company table with a couple of execs in stiff suits. Zara came as my guest. When they called my name, I walked up on stage in shoes that pinched and accepted a glass trophy taller than my forearm. The lights were hot on my face. I gave what I thought was going to be a nervous, forgettable speech. But in that moment, I remembered the judges' comments and the late-night user testing sessions with anxious teenagers and exhausted mums. So I talked about them. About how design can make it easier for someone to ask for help, how every button and prompt has a tiny moral weight. When I came off stage, People I'd never met shook my hand. That was beautiful, one woman said. My daughter uses that app. Thank you. On the Uber ride home, still buzzing, I opened the family group chat and dropped a photo of me on stage with the trophy. Mum, lovely dress, sweetheart. Luke, nice one. That was it. I stared at the screen, then at the city lights blurring past the window. Okay, I thought. If they're not going to celebrate me, I'm going to celebrate myself. The idea for the party started half as a joke. I was ranting to Zara over brunch, waving my fork around. Imagine if I just rented out a place, invited everyone who's ever actually supported me, and had a whole night that was unapologetically about this. Zara didn't laugh. Why imagine, she said. Do it. I can't throw my own party. That's narcissistic. Is it? Or is it just not waiting for people who clearly aren't going to show up for you? The thought lodged in my chest. Over the next few days, it kept resurfacing while I answered emails and sat in meetings. Why shouldn't I be allowed to mark this? If my family couldn't see the value, that didn't mean there wasn't any. So I did it. I found a small event space above a wine bar with exposed brick and fairy lights. They did a pizza and canopy package that wouldn't completely destroy my savings. I designed my own digital invitation, of course, with a tiny icon of the trophy in the corner and called the event Lena's I actually did the thing night. I invited coworkers, a few uni friends, my therapist, who politely declined but said she was proud of me, and yes, my family and Tom. I didn't position it as come worship me, just as a celebration. A marker. The RSVPs trickled in. Zara. Obviously yes, I will be there first and last. Coworkers. Enthusiastic. Uni friends. Hell yes, queen. Tom. I'll try to get there after class. No promises though, group assignment. Mum. We'll see, darling. Your father is very tired lately, and Sunday nights are hard. Luke. Probably not, mate. The baby goes down at 7 and we're shattered. I put my phone down and let the disappointment wash over me. Then I thought about it differently. Good. Then I don't have to spend the whole night managing their moods. The day of the party, I worked from home, then spent 2 hours doing my hair and makeup with a playlist blasting. No one was rushing me. No one was asking me to help with potato salad or pick up wine. It was weirdly peaceful. And that's how I ended up at the wine bar, glass in hand, throat tight, looking at a room full of chosen people. People who knew what had gone into this, designers, QA testers, friends who'd brought me coffee when I'd been on deadline. Which brings us back to my shaky speech and the moment I finally exhaled. I spent a long time thinking I had to wait for other people to tell me what was worth celebrating. I told the room. Family, boyfriends, bosses. But this project mattered. Not because some judges said so, but because people use it on their worst days. You, I gestured around, have all seen that. So, thank you for being here to mark it with me. They clapped. Some people hooped. I saw Zara wiping her eyes. For the first time in years, I felt fully visible and not ashamed about it. Afterwards, someone snapped a photo of me holding the trophy in front of the cake, laughing, head thrown back. Later that night, I posted it on Instagram with a caption about taking up space in your own life. I didn't tag my family. The next morning, Mum called. I let it go to voicemail. Time for a quick little analysis break because this whole situation says a lot about how we treat quiet achievements versus the big socially approved milestones. First off, Lena throwing herself a party is, in my opinion, iconic behavior. Not in a main character syndrome way, but in a I refuse to keep waiting for people who have made it very clear they don't value this part of me way. Women especially are trained to shrink their wins, to make themselves small so no one feels threatened or bored. Lena has been doing that for years, downplaying her work, laughing off the lack of interest, letting Luke's Tesla and baby swallow the oxygen in every room. Her family isn't cartoonishly evil. They're just painfully self-absorbed in that very normal, very damaging way. They prioritize the milestones they understand. Cars, weddings, babies, law careers. Everything else is your little design thing. The sting isn't that they don't get UX. It's that they aren't even curious enough to ask. Tom, meanwhile, is the human embodiment of supportive adjacent. He says the right congratulatory words, but there's no emotional follow-through. For a partner, that's a red flag. You don't have to understand every detail of your person's job to recognize when something is huge for them and show up accordingly. Was Lena being extra with the party? Maybe to some people. But honestly, the alternative was what? Sitting at another Sunday dinner listening to autopilot settings while the biggest professional moment of her life floats by unnoticed? If your choice is between being called self-indulgent and continuing to disappear in your own story, I'm voting for balloons and pizza every time. Update 10 months later. I didn't expect that one party to change my entire life, but looking back, it really was a line in the sand. Let's start with Tom. He did eventually show up to the party for 20 minutes. He arrived an hour and a half late, already half sweaty from whatever urgent group meeting he'd been at, gave me a quick kiss, said, "Place looks nice," and then spent most of his short time there checking his emails at the bar. He left without even trying the cake. On the Uber ride home, yes, we shared one, I'm not a monster, I finally said, "That really hurt, you know." He looked confused. What did? You being late, barely talking to anyone, acting like you were doing me a favor by showing up. He sighed. Lena, we're adults. We can't drop everything for every little thing. You know how important my MBA is. Every little thing. I won a national award, I said quietly. I threw one party for one night and I asked you to be there. That's not every little thing. He shrugged. I came, didn't I? It hit me then. He wasn't going to get it. Not because he was incapable, but because he didn't think he needed to. In his world, my wins were optional extras. His were the core storyline. We broke up 2 weeks later. It wasn't one screaming fight, just a series of conversations that made it painfully clear we wanted different things. Or more accurately, I wanted a partner, and he wanted an orbiting support character. My family took the breakup harder than they'd taken my award. Mum called, flustered. Are you sure? He was so stable, love. You're nearly 30. You can't be too picky. I'd rather be alone than with someone who treats my life like background noise, I said. She tooted under her breath. You and your dramatic standards. I almost backtracked. Almost. But then I remembered standing at the front of that party, the feeling of being held up by people who actually saw me. I held the line. As for the family response to the award and the party, that got interesting. Apparently, some of Dad's colleagues had seen my LinkedIn post about the award and mentioned it to him at work. Your daughter's speech was fantastic, one of them said. You must be proud. Dad came home, sat down at the kitchen table, and typed my name into Google. That's when he found the conference posting, the award citation, the photo of me holding the trophy with a quote about designing for vulnerability. The next Sunday, I skipped family dinner. Partly because I was exhausted, partly because I didn't feel like smiling through questions about Tom. Around 8 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Hi, love. Just wanted to say, I finally watched your speech. You spoke very well. I didn't realize how big a deal it was. Proud of you. I stared at it for a long time. It wasn't a confetti cannon, but for my father, that might as well have been skywriting. I wrote back. Thanks, Dad. That means a lot. A month later, Mum reluctantly asked if I'd say a few words at a fundraiser her friend was organizing because you speak so confidently now. I almost laughed at the sudden pivot, but I said yes on my terms. No self-deprecation, no pretending I just help with apps. I talked about design and mental health and how community isn't just blood, it's who shows up. Luke has been the slowest to shift. He still makes jokes about famous little sister and app celebrity. But there's a different edge now. He at least acknowledges that my work exists. Once, when his wife thought I couldn't hear, she said, You know it's cool what she does, right? My friend uses that app. The biggest change, though, isn't them. It's me. That party did something to my brain. I started asking, what would the version of me who booked a venue to celebrate herself do here? She'd negotiate her salary, so I did. I walked into Greg's office with a list of my contributions and the award as external validation, and I asked for a raise and a clearer title. He blinked, impressed, and then said yes. She'd say no to being the unpaid emotional event planner of the family. So when Mum tried to rope me into organizing Luke's kids' over-the-top third birthday party, I said, I can't this time. I'm focusing on some things for myself. When she sighed and started with, You're so good at it though, I didn't cave. She'd build more of the life she wanted instead of waiting to be invited into someone else's. So I joined a local meetup of women in tech, started mentoring a junior designer, and said yes when Zara suggested we submit a talk proposal for a conference together. We got in. The funniest part? The more I centered my own life, the less obsessed I became with my family's approval. Not because it stopped mattering entirely. It still stings when they forget to ask how my week was. But because it's no longer the only mirror I look into. About 3 months ago, Mum came to my apartment for the first time since the party. She walked in, took in the plants, the framed award on the shelf, the photo from the party in a simple black frame. You've really made this place your own, she said, almost surprised. I have, I said. She looked at the photo for a long moment. I should have been there, she said quietly. Not an apology, exactly, but a crack in the armor. You were invited, I replied gently. You still are. To things. But you have to show up because you want to, not out of obligation. She nodded, eyes shiny. I'm trying, she said. I know, I said. And I did. So here we are. I'm not the overlooked one anymore. Not because they've suddenly become perfect parents, but because I stopped agreeing to be invisible. And that more than the trophy or the LinkedIn likes or the party photos is the real award. Roll call on the main players, because everyone in this story deserves a little post-credits analysis. Lena. Opie, she's the quiet grinder who finally realizes she's allowed to occupy her own life. For years, she does the good daughter / cool girlfriend / low-maintenance employee thing, never making a fuss when people ignore her wins, always being the understanding one. The award doesn't magically create confidence, but it gives her enough external validation to question the script. The crucial moment isn't even the trophy. It's her choosing to throw the party for herself and then following through. Break up with Tom? Asking for a raise? Saying no to organizing other people's events? Those are all ripple effects of that one act of self-celebration. She's not flawless. She internalizes a lot and stews before speaking, but when she finally does, it's measured, honest, and boundary-based rather than vengeful. A+ character development. Tom, the ex. Classic, supportive on paper partner. He says the right words but does the bare minimum actions. The fact that he calls a national award party every little thing tells you everything about his priorities. He doesn't need to be an expert in UX to recognize that this is huge for Lena and treat it accordingly. Instead, he treats showing up for her as a favor he does between real commitments. He's not a cartoon villain. He's just fundamentally misaligned with someone who is starting to value herself. Breakup was overdue. He'll probably end up with someone who's content to be an accessory to his LinkedIn narrative. Lena is not that girl anymore. Mom and Dad, they're almost painfully believable. They don't set out to hurt Lena. They just undervalue everything that doesn't match their idea of success. Baby? A car? A court case? Endless applause. National industry recognition in a field they don't understand? That's nice, dear. Their crime is neglect, not malice. But neglect still scars. To their credit, once outside validation smacks them in the face, Dad's colleagues' online speech, they start to adjust. Dad's understated text and Mom's eventual admission that she should have been there are small, late, but genuine steps. They're not villains. They're emotionally underdeveloped parents finally realizing their blind spot. Luke, honestly, he's more wallpaper than antagonist here. Representative of the golden child who doesn't notice the oxygen he's taking up. He's used to being the star and hasn't been required to have much curiosity about anyone else. His does it pay reaction to the award is peak older brother energy, dismissive but not malicious. He's probably trainable with time and a few more reality checks. Overall, This story is less revenge and more reclamation. No one gets publicly shamed. No one's life is dramatically destroyed. Instead, the big twist is internal. Lena stops waiting for a committee of family members and boyfriends to approve her worth. She takes one night, one room, one cake that says, "You did this," and builds a new baseline from there. And honestly, that's the kind of plot twist more of us need.